So on the latest episode of the PCT podcast, we are absolutely delighted to welcome Courtney Pitt, current under-13s league coach at Wolverhampton Wanderers Academy. Good morning, Courtney. Firstly, I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come and speak to us today. How are you keeping?
Yeah, good, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, mate, it's always been a pleasure to have a chat when we've caught up before. But obviously, before we get into the crux of the main interview or podcast, is that could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your current role?
Yeah, so obviously I'm Courtney Pitt, former football player for a few clubs. Like started at Chelsea Academy when I was really young, all the way through up to kind of first year, second year pro age group, and then moved to Portsmouth. Was there for a few years, including a few loans to Coventry, Oxford, sorry, Coventry, Luton, then moved to Oxford till the end of the season. Then played Boston, Cambridge, York, Telford, till I finally thought the game's had enough of me. So decided to yeah, hang the boots up. And yeah, moved into coaching and worked in schools and a few other things. And currently now at Wolverhampton Wanderers, been there for um, 18 months or so in the academy, working with the young boys there. So yeah, really good, really good.
What does an average day look like as a under-13s league coach for you then?
It all depends on the week that we have. A lot of it, as you can imagine, is all about building and planning towards the boys and the players' development, whether it's on the pitch, whether it's off pitch, whether it's kind of long term development plans that we may have for them, and relating that to the powers that be above us and the MDT staff that we have around us is really focusing on how we're going to improve the players. And that's majority of what we do each day. We go in, depending on the day. So tomorrow is really a busy day for us, really. Our Tuesdays are normally busy. We have a lot of planning meetings, squad meetings, MDT meetings, and then training with the boys that come in at like 5 till 7:30. Um, yeah, so a busy week. The boys are in quite a lot as soon as they go into the youth development phase. So our boys get 5 nights contact a week. So yeah, really busy and keeps me busy as you can imagine. But yeah, really, really, really good. Working, doing something I love.
Again, there's a lot of stuff that I want to delve into in terms of player development and how your sort of experience has shaped that. And what I want to sort of get into is I've had the joy of working alongside you, Courtney, and a development role, and I've always been thoroughly keen and eager to listen to your experiences. I want to go back to right at the start. Obviously, you've been in football through different roles for a long, long time now. Can you remember what age it was that you started to play and maybe your first team environment that you were involved in?
Um, yeah, so I started playing from really young. So and that's just one-on-ones with my brother in the living room and the house and outside in the garden and in the streets, really. So from my brother was keen playing football. He's a 4 or 5 years older than me, so playing with him 1v1 a lot of the time. Um, yeah, in the house was really where I honed some of my kind of skills. Then school games. Um, I didn't really play in a team till I was about, well, school games, I suppose, so primary school till eight, nines maybe, but proper structured football within a Sunday was probably not till I was about 10 or 11. I remember going on trial to Luton when I was about 10, and then got signed by Luton that season. But it was just me playing football. I didn't really have a clue what I was doing because I'd never played in a team before. So yeah, I ended up going there and for a season, and they let me go after that one season, and then I went and played in a structured team for 2 or 3 years well, 2 years in grassroots, um, playing for obviously my secondary school. Then I played for my county as well as grassroots football, and then signed for Chelsea when I was under 13s, 14. So yeah, that kind of structure um, as more of a street footballer really at that stage, and until I had got that structure around, as I said, 10, 11, 12, I actually started to play in team and understand what playing in a team looks like.
You may have seen me writing some stuff down there because a load of questions came up from there. But
Yeah,
what I wanted to delve into, you mentioned that you weren't, you were just playing,
yeah.
and was it Luton that came along? How did that change anything in terms of the way you played? And then can you remember maybe the thoughts or the feelings after they decided, listen, we're gonna let you go back into grassroots?
Um, I was probably really naive to it at that stage. So, you know what it's like when I didn't have a position and they put me in a position. And as I said, I was just playing, turning up for training each week. At that time, it weren't that much contact. It was once a week of just going and doing the couple of hours training session. Um, yeah, so it was very naive to it at that point. I was 10 years old, so um, and looking back at it, I probably weren't ready for that kind of structure. So it was honest. I didn't really think anything of it. And when they said, I didn't really think of it. It probably did dent my confidence because then I went back and played grassroots. Actually stopped playing for a while. I actually stopped playing for about 6 months, and then went back into playing for after school club actually near where my gran was in London. So that's how I ended up going back into football, and that's how I ended up going into the grassroots team really because I didn't know my parents were really naive to football at that stage. So and getting into teams. So I ended up going to after school club, playing in the after school club, and then someone in the after school club knew someone who had a team, and then I ended up playing for the team, and that was it. Then loads of scouts came, and ended up getting scouted for a few different teams, and went into Brentford at that stage because they had an affiliation with Brentford. Um, yeah, so that's end up how I end up playing football again. But at the time of 10 or 11, getting let him go by Luton, yeah, it probably did say damage my confidence a little, but it was just the fact that I didn't know where to go next after that, which was probably why I stopped playing for so long.
Just maybe a little bit of a personal one to come from that, Courtney, is that you mentioned there that you didn't play for probably 6 months. Was that a case of mum and dad saying, listen, we just want you to be happy? Or was it a case of like, right, it's damaged your confidence, we don't want you playing? Was the what were the conversations
Um,
you had, if you can remember?
yeah, I don't think we actually had those conversations. It was just stop playing. What you doing now? I didn't really think about going into another team. Um, we didn't really, as I said, we didn't really have links to loads of teams in London or know the structure of how to get in a team. Or I didn't push to get into a team. As I said, I weren't in a team originally either. So it was Luton. I didn't actually have a team to fall back into. It was just I was at Luton and then I weren't at Luton and now end up nowhere. So end up, as I said, going to after school club, and that's how I end up playing again. But yeah, it wasn't really those conversations. I said my parents were really. I lived with my mum, so it was really she had no clue. So it was just go to school and turn up and play and mess about with your friends again.
I think that's quite interesting for me is that you've mentioned street football before, and that you went back into after school clubs where it's probably a little bit fun, and then a friend was like, "Oh, do you want to come play for us?" Um, did anything change when you were aware of interests or scouts there in the tracksuits on a match day? Did anything change in the way that you played, or were you just trying to still enjoy the game?
Yeah, I don't think I never kind of changed the way I play. I always enjoyed playing and trying to be what word am I looking for? Yeah, just trying to enjoy and trying to be imaginative and creative when I played, and that never really changed. Not until obviously the scouts kept coming and asking for my parents' numbers, and the phone kept ringing where it got really more serious. But yeah, that didn't really affect me that much. I was playing at the time. I probably didn't realize how good I was. To be honest, I know I was playing and scoring and having an effect and being one of the better players in the teams I played for, but I didn't really think about, oh yeah, I want to go and play for a professional team. That never really entered my mind.
So then the opportunity to come in at Chelsea and such a prestigious club, how was there any pressures going in? Because if we liken it now to suddenly the current current trend of people wanting to play, there's a lot of pressure to get into academies. And ultimately the age at 13, 14 at which you did go in is probably deemed as quite late.
Yeah,
Um, how did that feel in terms of going in, obviously donning a Chelsea kit and representing the
yeah,
club?
yeah. It was re amazing experience, really good. It weren't new to me at that point because I was in at Brentford, I went in at Crystal Palace, I went in at Wickham, I went in at Wimbledon, I went in at a few clubs, so it weren't new to me in terms of going in and playing the few trial games. And I know many of the clubs wanted me to go back um, and um, and sign for them at that stage. But I remember going into Chelsea and playing a game. Can't remember who we played now, but we won the game, and they offered me straight away, first day after the first game. And with the other clubs, I'm denied and not really. But I literally said to my dad, I remember calling my dad in the office and we're going to sign, like, we're going to sign, and it just felt right. So I played that one game and signed that day.
Right.
That day. So yeah, so it just felt right at that stage. So I was in really good club, really good club, really good people around. So yeah,
What I like, Courtney, is, and I know we'll come on to this in terms of the coach development stuff, is that when you're working with coaches, and I've seen you work with players, is that you do encourage them to be creative and play with that little bit of fear. When you were signed, did your game change at all? And if you were still the creative, and I'd say brave risk taker that you were being, was
yeah,
that coached out of you, or was that encouraged, or was how did the environment change then?
really interesting question. So I would say yes to a certain extent. I think you always have to, as a coach, and you know as well as I do, that you're always trying to create a framework where freedom and creativity can happen. And it's difficult if the person who wants to be creative a part doesn't want to be part of that framework. So different. Um, so it was more about me adjusting to the framework that to allow myself to be creative within that framework rather than them coaching certain things out of me, I would say. So yeah, so it's a bit of a kind of a trick question or a trick answer, I would say. But yeah, 100%. You can't just be freedom and creative anywhere you want within an elite environment. It won't happen. So I would say that they will try and get you to be creative as much as they can, but within a structure.
Really interesting. It's it's about the player, isn't it? I think at times, but you mentioned there the framework, and what I'd like to try and pose this next question is there a framework for every player? So in terms of what may have been for you at Chelsea, might not have been for somebody else. Do you think that their attributes would then fit into a different framework, and that would depend on club to club?
100%. 100%. You've seen it many times where we all seen players leave certain clubs and do really well at that club, and you think, right, maybe not. Even if the clubs maybe lower down and they get a really good move away, and you think, right, it's time to kick on, and it doesn't work out, or vice versa. And you see like young players progressing in the club, starting off really well and doing really well in that team structure, and then move to another club that maybe not the same and not do so well. I think it's really difficult for those players to adapt, especially if they've been so structured within a framework. That's why it's important for our coaches now to give it a lot of different ways and tools for each player to have so they can perform in different tactical and for different environments and different coaches. Um, yeah, but the structure is still so important, especially in the elite environment. I think you look at football now and the way it's going, the coaching and what word I'm looking for, the physicality and the sports science is so detailed now that if you're not an athlete or be able to move or be able to be tactically adaptable, you're going to struggle in this elite environment at the moment. And it's down to coaches to try and give all those tools and all those kind of attributes to players that they can still be creative and still allow those the decisions of when to be creative or when to wriggle and turn away from pressure in a certain extent. We don't want, if you're a centre back and we've never allowed them to be 1v1 and beat a player, then once they get pressed, because that's what everyone's getting pressed at the moment. Once they get pressed and they can't drop a shoulder to try and beat that first man or play a ball around the corner, then they're not going to be able to play at the elite level. So we have to give them all the tools to try and do that.
And that's, I'm hopefully going to come on to that later, but that's a difficult thing to give them a lot, give them everything they need because the game is becoming more and more demanding. What one question that popped up at the beginning was and hopefully I can do this question justice, is that you mentioned you're playing school football, grassroots football, in on trials, county football. The physical load there and being able to be an efficient mover and getting the exposure to that higher level of physicality. Do we think we're playing less or more football for the youngsters now, or do you think it's more structured? And does that hinder development if they're not allowed to play in different environments? That's
Yeah.
a really big question.
Um,
I apologize.
yeah. It's difficult because you have to remember nowadays, yes, our boys get, as we mentioned earlier, they get 5 contacts a week. Whereas previously, when I was growing up, I got one training session and a game. So it's different. So it allowed more freedom, I should say, for me to then play school football, county football, play with my mates, all those kind of things. Maybe try different sports. All those kind of things were different. I think yes, we are able to manage load a lot nowadays, especially in the higher youth development phase, I think. But in the lower phase, I think it's still encouraged for the players to play multiple sports, to play with their mates, to have those down weeks where they can just be kids at times and not really early professionalize them. I think that is so important. Um, Talking about the load and what I did when I was younger, I don't know, I would play 4 games in a day if I could. I just love playing. So I would play county game and play a school game straight after, then train the next day. And I think it's important that we try and build that robustness and giving those players, as I mentioned before, different environments to play in against different abilities and find ways to have success. I think that's important.
My mind's racing again, as you know, having worked with me, that a lot of things go around in my head at the same time. I'm going off piste a little bit, and I have got some questions for later on. Talk to us about the scholarship, or what would be, was it the youth YTS scheme at the time? Um, what were the feelings around that? Obviously, 17, 18, uncertainty. Was the any sort of false, not false promises, but conversations had where it was led to believe you were staying on or offered? Or talk to us about that part of your career.
Yeah, so I remember I done my GCSEs in late June. I remember the last day leaving school. Literally started the week later I was started full time for Chelsea. So no break, straight in, thinking, right, excellent. I'm a footballer. First day I came in, I was assigned 4 players to go, right, you're doing that boots, you're doing those, that equipment room, you're cleaning this, you're doing that. And I thought, hold on a minute, I'm a footballer. That's what's going on here. But yeah, really challenging time for coming from school straight into a full-time environment with um, players that you said some real good players with high potential, trying to compete because that's what it's all about. You're all trying to compete for a big prize, and I think sometimes we go away from that factor when we don't realise that that's what we're there for. And I think a lot of the boys and players there, especially when you get to the higher elite environment, they recognise that we're here to compete, we're here to try and get a prize, we're here to try and improve and potentially make careers for ourselves, whether it's in the first team or somewhere else. And I think that was evident when I first went into the building. Like it's about work and what we had at Chelsea when we came in. It was structured. The changing room was all structured. So first year, second year, first year pros, second year pros, and then all the way up the corridor with the first team. So every year you was hoping to move up a room. That was the target. So that I don't know whether obviously they've done it on purpose, but every year you was just right. I need to get next door. I need to get next door. I need to get next door, and that's how it worked. Um, yeah, and my kind of journey had loads of ups and downs, loads of ups and downs. I think as I said, the first month I went in, I thought, I'm not sure this is for me.
Okay.
This is hard work. This is not sure this is for me. So I ended up actually having 2 weeks off where I thought, I don't know if I'm going back. I'm unsure. I used to have to catch 3 trains into Harlington. I would leave my house we had training, we had to be in for 9. I remember I was up at 6, leaving my house at 6:30, and then obviously we had to sometimes look after the first team players, and they had a double session. So if they had a double session, we had a double session, and then we had to make sure that their kit was washed, dried, laid out for when they come in the next day. I remember at times we were watching EastEnders and Coronation Street in the kit room, waiting for the dryer to finish before we could lay out their kit, and then go home, get home for 10 o'clock, up again, back again. I was like, well, this is hard work. So, and in the end, so I ended up having 2 weeks off, and then they convinced me to stay. But after that, it was just kind of what word am I looking? Refocusing my mind on what's going. And I think during that 2 weeks, when I had the 2 weeks off and going back in, I was like, right, that's it. I've got to go for it. I've got to go for it. And that reaffirmed my thoughts and refocus of the target that I was going towards, I think.
I think a question that I would like to ask, and it's obviously just opinion, is that with the rise of, excuse me,
Especially.
I'll edit that out. With the rise of social media and the glitz and glam of becoming a footballer, is it
Yeah.
often missed out of the grit and the hard work that has to go into becoming a professional? I think social media
Yeah.
can sort of skip over that.
Yeah. I think the stress and the intensity and dedication that you have to become an elite footballer or player at a certain level is missed a lot. Um, you have to sacrifice so many things to try and make a career of the game. And as I said, the way you have to think and feel and confidence you have to have, almost border on arrogance in terms of your self belief to make it through that structure is important. And some people might misconstrue that as I said, arrogance, but you need that self belief, almost self determination to go, right, I am the best. and I've got to prove every day that I'm the best. So you have to go in that mindset of every day you've got to be the best. If not, you might not play, or you might not get another contract, or you might not be able to support your family. It's so tough to try and go through that every single day.
I think that's an incredible sort of statement, is that we've heard the quote by Sir Alex Ferguson, is that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And those that know me know I love a quote, and I think if you constantly going the extra mile, it's never really crowded. But for every time that you take your foot off the gas, I imagine is that somebody else is forging ahead.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's always someone waiting, and that's the thing because the sport is so big, and there's so many people playing, and you see nowadays how many young players are now playing and coming through. That never changed. So if you're not doing it, and as I said, if you're at one of those elite top clubs, they can go and buy anybody they want in the world, realistically. So you have to really think about your game each and every day. And as I said, the intensity and the stress of the training sessions and the games itself, I think people kind of well, I said no, don't think about the stress and the intensity of training sessions and the stress of that players put their body under each day. So you see people break down is because some bodies can't handle that kind of stress each day, and yeah, it's a real sacrifice. I mean, you've seen some of the older players now that can't walk. They struggle, they're limping each day. They've got, oh yeah, my back, my calf, my leg, my hip, my knees, and that's the stress of pounding your body for 20 years. It's gonna take its toll.
Again, that could probably be another another episode in terms of the sacrifice made for that. What one thing I would like to pick up on that leads on to the next sort of question was you mentioned there about maybe a bit of an arrogance, or I would say like a laser sharp focus on refocusing your brain. Did that come into account at the end of the YTS, that the scholarship years when you were offered the chance to go to Portsmouth with Graham Ricks? Was it a case of
Um,
what was the
well,
process then?
well, actually, I during the second year scholarship and then going into because I signed a pro at Chelsea, and then that second end of the second year, third year, I was playing well, and I knew I was playing well, and I was playing reserve team. I was actually training with the first team most weeks, in and around on a Friday match day squads under Ranieri, and I knew I was playing well. Me and a few other boys, so Carlton Cole, Leon Knight, and a few other boys were in and around, just on the borderline of play of getting into match day squads with the first team. So every Friday night we'd be training with the team in the day, and then they put the squad up after, and you had to go look to see the name. And every week my name would be blocked out. And I go, not this week, not this week. Next week I'm gonna go again. But yeah, I knew I was playing well, and they offered me a new contract for another 3 to 4 years, I think it was. And I was 19 at the time, and I just thought another 3 to 4 years here when I felt I was ready to play. I don't know what level, who knows, but I felt like I needed. I think I felt that I've done reserve team football, I've done youth team football. My next step was first team football somewhere regular. Whether that the decision may have been to go on loan or who knows, but I felt I was ready. And as I mentioned previously, that the club can go and buy anybody. So I felt that the best opportunity for me to have more of a long-term future sustainability of playing each week was to move. And that was the decision I made. So end up moving to Portsmouth under Graham Wicks, who was part of the Chelsea set before. I remember when I first went as a schoolboy, 13 to 14, he would watch our games regularly, and then he would take me out for extra kind of little after games coaching. to try and help because we played in similar position. So he would always be one of my advocates that helped me going through. So when he offered the chance for me to go to Portsmouth, I kind of felt it made sense for me.
So a decision was made then to follow somebody you obviously trusted, um, and work well with. Then comes probably the moment that no footballer wants, or somebody that they trust loses the job. How did that sort of impact your feelings at the time and maybe your game?
Well, it's the first kind of experience for me. Well, I say the first one I was at Chelsea, so a few people lost their jobs while it was there. A few managers we went through, but it didn't really have a direct impact on me at Chelsea because I was part of the academy, I suppose. So going into Portsmouth and actually going into the club and being part of the meeting when someone goes the next day you're in the meeting and one day they're there, the next day they're not is different. I didn't know how at the time how it would affect me. I didn't really think about it affecting me. I was playing at the time and being part of the first team squad. Even when Harry Redknapp came in, even when he came in, nothing really changed. I was still playing till the end of the season, kind of thing. I remember scoring in my last game at Man City away. I scored in that game. Coming back in pre-season, kind of rejuvenized, saying right, ready for the new start. Um, we signed loads of players. We signed. Our team was good. Signed loads of players during the pre-season. Came in, and so I never really felt that it would affect me. As I said, I always had that self-confidence in myself about being able to be one of the players that can affect the game and use my attributes to be part of the team. And I was always one, as I said, the season before I was playing youth team, reserve team football as one of the better players. So that never changed for me whatsoever. And not until it does change and you realise actually you're not part of the plans as you were. You're not kind of a regular. Yeah, and that proved difficult. That definitely proved difficult. That was the first time I really experienced not playing, and yeah, not knowing what to do with yourself. I was away from home at that stage. I was still 19, lived away, lived on my own, and probably didn't deal with it as well as I probably should have at that stage. Yeah, so it proved difficult.
What sort of support networks did you have there? Because is there a I don't want to say stigma, but obviously if you're in a position where you're not unsure, sorry, you're unsure and going through some maybe not intrusive thoughts, but thoughts of where do I go now? Have I made the right decision? Is there players that you could lean on? Was it teammates? Was it family or former coaches?
Teammates probably could lean slightly with your thoughts, but many of those probably teammates that you were leaning towards were probably in the similar situations that you were in because you're probably being kind of discarded or casted to one side. So you're all kind of having those not intrusive thoughts, probably negative thoughts about your situation at that same time. Um, yeah, so the support network honestly weren't great for young players as I was that stage. I think the older players were probably used to it more because they're more experienced with that. But as a young player, not really support network. You're just cast aside. No one really talks to you. You're just like you're training over there now, um, and basically they don't want you there. So then you're getting in the process. Right? How can I get out of this situation?
Yeah, obviously, you mentioned earlier a couple of loan moves to sort of Luton and Oxford, and you mentioned you grew up in London. How did that feel for you, or was there any changes when you had to move away from home? Were you on your own as a young player, or was the host families? How talk to us about that experience?
Now, I actually moved on my own. So I moved from London to Portsmouth when I was 19, moved into my own place. No host family, moved into my own place at 18, 19. Um, yeah, and that was brand new for me, obviously, having to pay bills and organize your house and cook and clean and all those kind of things on my own. But as I said, I was quite mature in that set anyway. I could look after myself at that age anyway. My mum was really good in terms of supporting me with my independence from when I was young. She made me grow up and right, this is what you have to do. So I was ready to be on my own. I remember my mum actually wanted to come with me when I moved to Portsmouth. She actually said, "I'm coming." I was like, "No, you're not. I'm going on my own," because I felt I needed it. I needed to branch out and leave the nest, if that's what you want to say. But yeah, it was difficult. I had to grow up really quick, really quickly. I remember not. I didn't drive at the time either, so I couldn't just pop back up the road to London and go. I was catching the trains, so I actually learned to drive when I was in Portsmouth. Um, because it then it thought, well, I need to drive. In London, it's not really a big issue because you got London transport and stuff like that. Where in Portsmouth, like, well, I need to drive now. So yeah, that helped. Um, but yeah, it was difficult. And then moving to different clubs and on loan. So I moved to Luton in my second season or third season there at Portsmouth. Second season, I think it was. Went there for a couple of months loan, stayed in hotels and played. So it's completely different. And then moved to Coventry. I went to Coventry on loan for a month and was at Coventry for 1 month over Christmas. I remember spending New Year's Eve in the hotel on my own. Yeah, so it's difficult. It's difficult moving around and traveling and being away from people. When especially in that kind of limbo area when you haven't really got a nest. As I said, when you're in a club, you're based in that club for your years of the contract. So I was still based in Portsmouth, but having to travel around alone and be a nomad for a little while. So yeah, difficult at that stage.
How we see it a lot now. A lot of young players are sort of getting out to Championship League One clubs to gain that experience, but it would be very easy. And again, I'm just speaking openly here. I'm assuming it would be very easy if you're at a club like Chelsea to stay at the club and just go about your day-to-day business. How vitally important would you say that those loan experiences were, and not just from the football side, but life skills in terms of being on your own?
Yeah, yeah, so important, so important. I think you end up being able to be in your head a little bit more and really think about what you want. And it does definitely narrow your focus on what you want to achieve. I would encourage a lot all young players to try and go out and play men's football as early as they can. I remember being at a coach's voice meeting, meeting, yeah, coach's voice seminar, whatever you want to call it, in London, and they had Ralph Rangnick on there, and he was talking about the stats of the Champions League a couple of seasons ago, the quarterfinals. They had, I think I don't want to misquote the percentage, but it was a really high percentage, something like 80 to 90% of the players played men's football when they were 17 or from 17 and
Wow.
18, and that's a huge percent, whatever the level was. And then they progressed or stayed in the same team or whatever, but they were all playing men's football at a really young age. So it's important that our youngsters don't get too comfortable and driven to stay comfortable in the youth team 21 setup. It's about playing um, men's football, open age football when you can, to try and build that robustness, to try and play with players who, as I mentioned before, um, families depend on them and the result really matters, and playing for contracts and getting that kind of understanding of what it takes to be a footballer for a long time. I think it's so important that they get that.
I think a lot of the conversations have been quite deep so far in terms of maybe the side that we don't see of football. There's surely been some really highs and some really big highs, including the conference playoff final at Wembley. Courtney, talk to us about that. That is
Yeah,
every boy's dream.
yeah. So I'm lucky enough to play there 3 times. So I managed to play at Wembley 3 times in my career, which, as I said, everybody's dream is to play at Wembley. So really good. It was a high for me getting there. If the result weren't as high for me, but yeah, the fact that I've had the experience of playing at Wembley is amazing, amazing achievement. I mean, when I was at Portsmouth in our second year, we got promoted to the Premier League, which is another huge kind of memory for me. Um, Remembering the celebrations of the city and the boys and the club and what it meant to everybody, which was really good. So yeah, really, really, um, yeah, strong and good memories of my career. Um, my debut stands out. So one of the biggest achievements I have, I always say, is my debut. So the fact that the hard work that we mentioned before about me having 2 weeks away and then not knowing I can come back and refocusing that, and actually then being on the site. I remember I came on at Stubbs, so it was at Molyneux actually, where I work now. So my debut is at Molyneux. But for Portsmouth, we drew to all. But yeah, I remember coming on and stuff, my name coming on and my number going on, and I just remember taking it all in with the big crowd and thinking, yeah, okay, this is what I want. So yeah, so I remember that, and those are really big achievements that you will never forget and will never be taken away from you. So yeah, there was some really, really good moments in my career. But we say that unless you're playing for one of those elite clubs, probably your career is full of lows more than highs, because there's only one team that can win, and we all want to win. We all, regardless of what we say, when the football, you want to win, and you're that competitive that you want to win each game. But it's the nature of football, that elite sport, that only a few are able to do that.
Was there ever a moment where during your playing career where coaching came into your thought process, and was there a stage where you thought, right, football, as you mentioned earlier, football's had enough of me? Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how did that, first of all, how did that feel, and talk to us about the thought processes around your next steps?
Okay. No, to answer your question, coaching never came into my thoughts when I was playing during my career at all. I remember finishing and thinking, got a clue what I want to do here now. It came to an abrupt stop. So it weren't like I was thinking about it. I remember I was at Telford actually playing, and we was in the National League in the conference, and it was during pre-season, and I was like, I remember thinking that in this summer that right, I'm going to get myself fit. I'm going to get, like, I was 32, I think ish, something like that, 31. Get myself fit, try and really give it my all this season. And I remember we're doing some pre-season at Cosford, and we were running around the track, and I was running around the track, and it was the last kind of 800-meter run that was doing. So right, come on, I'm gonna go for it. And I remember running. I'm thinking, right, it was tough. And running. I remember a few of the boys were running with me, and then we was going. We done 400 meters, and then they were just talking, and I'm trying everything. And then I remember them going, looking at me and saying, "Oh, we're just gonna get off now." And they just went, "Phew." And then I thought, "That's me done. That is me finished." So I knew that time that I couldn't, I hadn't, and I was trying my best, and I just couldn't go with them. And I thought, right, that's me done. So and then I thought, right, what am I going to do next? I remember going part time, obviously working in schools and things like that. And then my mate asked me to go and help him with a club that was step 5-ish, step 6. He was managing, and he wanted me to just come around and play and help him coach the boys. And I said, all right, no problem. So I done that, and I loved it. I loved it. I loved being part of it and trying to help the young players and having that kind of authority to try and help and change formations and the structure of the team. And yeah, that was it. Then I decided to go into my badges. As I said, worked in school, and then fell into coaching that way.
What I find really interesting there, Courtney, was that takes a huge amount of self-awareness almost to say maybe it's my time.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm just speaking open and honestly. I think when that awareness happens is where probably growth happens more. Can you remember your actual first session that you delivered and how it went?
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. was. I remember back thinking it was awful. I think I done because I delivered a session that probably I was involved with that I remembered. That one's delivery session, barking orders. Not, I don't know if the players got anything out of it. If I got anything out of it, it was just awful. I remember thinking back, but as you said, self awareness and growth. So I knew I need to get better. So I applied myself to that courses, CPD events, learning from other coaches, talking to other coaches, observing other coaches, and and hopefully I'm a little bit better now.
How much of an impact when you were working in the schools has that helped in terms of your coaching development now, coaching maybe other sports and a range of people from high ability to lesser ability to different sizes, heights, age. How did that buy into your journey?
Yeah, hugely. I remember trying to do that same similar thing. I took a P lesson when I first went into the multi-sport school, and I took a P lesson, and I tried to run it as a training session. Never going to work. It was never going to work. And then obviously we had deep people with different abilities, people with different enthusiasm to it. Some people had no interest in sport whatsoever. Some people didn't even want to run. Some people didn't want to do any fitness, and it was just me trying to tailor and differentiate that those PE lessons for the students that I had. And I remember speaking to one of the students, and I think we done rugby. I think it was rugby, and I was trying to go, and he was walking about, and he said, "Listen, there's no way you're getting me to run, no chance." So I looked at him. I thought, right, and then I was trying to plan ways of how I could get him to run. So my challenge then for the next 4 weeks of rugby, I got to get this boy to try and run. And then I managed to get him to just break into a little sprint. And then I saw him a few years later, and he said, "I can't believe that you got me to run. You were the only person that ever got me to the run," and that's a success. So that it made me learn, or made me think that success for myself and each individual within sessions, lessons, P lessons, whatever you're doing, is different. So for that boy there, my success for him or for me was getting him to run and work. Where others who were really good at rugby, I had to challenge them in different ways. And it's just tailoring your challenge and differentiate your learning for each individual that's in your session. And that's what it helped me with.
I think that maybe, again, speaking obviously, probably a light bulb moment for you in terms of your coaching journey of not everybody's the same. And I think just from my experience, and we've spoke about in the courses, the amount of learners that we've spoke with who've done a session that they've been part of, but without understanding the players, the ability levels, the actual outcomes, they've done what they've done because they only know what they know. Was that a light bulb moment then for you to go with your playing career and maybe the experiences that you've had to go, I'm going to go and make a difference to people on the same journey as me?
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think because I'm not sure how to word. I think I could have done more with my, and I think nowadays this self awareness and um, or they're not so aware of what it takes to be an elite player, or um, or within your coaching session of the detail that you need that it takes to be an elite coach. And I think it's important that us as coach developers, us as coaches, trying to pass on that knowledge and pass on that message as much as we can, as much as we can. And whether they want to be an elite coach, a lot of them say they do, but how are they going to go about it? And that environment of really homing in your skills to improve people and improve players and improve coaching. It's so important. It's so important.
You mentioned obviously the school roles. When was your first sort of foray into academy football, and how did that come about? Because as you've alluded to, that coaching was never on the horizon for you.
Never, still not. It's still work on the horizon. I went to uni, so I went to staff uni when I was a late, a mature learner, we
Yeah.
would say, at staff uni, and I took obviously multi sports and coaching sessions. But I remember one of the lecturers coming to me and saying, "No, you're pretty good at this. Have you ever thought about going into academy and using your experience of it because you know I played football?" I said, Not really." Not really. I was training to be a PE teacher at the time. So I said, not really. No, not really. But then he said he had somebody knew. He used to work at Burton Albion. So he said he knew someone at Burton Albion. Would I be interested in going and doing some work there or passing my number on to me? I said, yeah, of course. No problem. And that weren't even as a coach. It was like as a scout. It was like a volunteer scout. So I went and got called number, done that, and ended up talking to the scout and managed to go in and talk about training sessions and yeah, ended up having some work in a part time role there, and then led to full time, and that's how I got in.
Something I want to try and delve into is we can be guarded sometimes as coaches and maybe just as people and in the way that we network with how we talk to people. How how valuable, maybe not aware at the time, but how valuable are conversations and asking questions? Because you've mentioned now a couple of times that your first foray into like step five, step six football was through a conversation. You've then had an opportunity to go and do some sort of casual scouting, which then led to an opportunity. And maybe I can say this because I sort of know you a little bit, is that your curious mind enabled you to have those questions and opportunities. Do those informal conversations almost leave you your business card with the person you're speaking to and can open those doors?
So I think the conversations that you have with people can leave a lasting impression. So whether you might not be in an official capacity or formal setting, interview wise, say, I think an informal conversation that you have with a coach, a player, a lecturer, whoever might then think, okay, he actually knows what he's talking about, and he's um, a nice person that you would do, and maybe then he might then mention your name to someone else, and that's how your network grows, right? So I think you're kind of the impression and the conversation, the questions that you have, and the knowledge that you share, whether to anybody, is important, and that's how, yeah, you can grow that network and get your foot in the door to a certain extent.
Has there ever been a setback on your coaching journey so far? So again, we can look at the highs of coaching. What we all perceive as that your coaching journey is that. It never very often it is. Has there
Yeah,
ever been a setback within your coaching journey where you thought, been here before as a player, not again?
yeah. So I remember, as I said, going into Burton, Albion, and the pre and having I went for loads of different interviews, trying to get in full time somewhere, trying to um, yeah, get myself in opportunity to go in full time, and turned down numerous not the right time or not the right job or not enough qualifications or not enough experience. And then the experience one is a huge one, right? About the experience one, because how are you going to get experience if you don't get the opportunity?
Exactly it.
So it's really difficult. But yeah, so huge kind of disability. But I always use that as a learning tool for me. So where each interview I went to, it was maybe not this bit of your CV or this bit of your attributes might need to be brushed up on. So I've got right feedback from me. I need to try and improve on that. Next time we go, well, maybe this and that. So every opportunity I used to try and increase my knowledge and develop myself. So that always helped as I went forward or went through to the next interview or the next process or the next opportunity. I would try and use that, enhance my developing my skills to try and make sure that if the opportunity came next time, then I'll be ready.
One thing that's always been clear for me, Courtney, when I've had the opportunity to work alongside you is that your how much you value the detail and standards within coaching. How did then the coach development role come about and why coach development as well as coaching?
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. I think I've always when I left football or when football left me, I done a personal training course as well. So I don't know whether it's always been in me to try and help people or try and have that relationship and build rapport and have that kind of conversation and yeah, that relationship with people where you can talk to and try and probe and influence. So I think that's kind of I thought that might have been my strength. So coming under the coach developer role, especially going into Burton, I got the head of coaching role there, and liked trying to improve and having those adult conversations, not just with younger players. So having be able to involve and help adult learning and adult futures and trying to build their careers and action plans and all those kind of development tools that they need. I felt that was something I really wanted to delve into. So when the opportunity came to be FA coach developer came up, I thought ideal. So I jumped at the chance to do it and loved it ever since. It's going into my what third season now doing that or more. I can't remember when we started, but yeah. And they really, really, really engage and love doing that, helping young coaches probe and challenge and get their clogs turning and me learning from them of how to do certain things and the way they work and different tools that I might pick up. So yeah. Really, really, really a really interesting part of my development, I would say.
One of the things that I'm always keen to stress to any potential coaches or learners on the journey is the workload that is involved. Um, Coaching doesn't always provide you with the opportunity to survive. Certainly when you've got a young family that are obviously looking up to you. What advice would you give to coaches in terms of how you juggle your workload? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a common theme is that a lot struggle with that. Um,
Yeah.
but it is the nature of the beast. How do you deal with the demands of your diary and your time?
Yeah, I've got loads better at it, I must admit. When I first started, it consumed me. I was 7 days, evenings, relentless, where probably the family life suffered a lot from that. Missing, obviously, functions, all kinds of things I was doing because I had to work. Um, I'm loads better now at it, where I have that kind of work life balance. It's so important. It's so important. It's not just for the family and to give you have to give your time to breathe slightly and I think your own reflections and learning takes place when you're not in it at times and you're not mind's not racing, so how are you ever going to really reflect on sessions on observation that you might do with coaches if you're bouncing from observation and session to session. So I think yeah, having that balance and not allowing it to consume me as much is so important. It's easy for me to say, right? Because I'm in it, and I'm working in a professional environment, and I'm doing the coach developing, and some people are really trying to get to there and strive towards that goal. And when you are, as I said, when I was doing that, it was 7 days a week because I wanted to reach a target, and I'm still kind of wanting to reach a target and get there. But I think yeah, sacrificing a little is important, but not to sacrifice too much.
It's really important. And what I find interesting as well, Courtney, and I'm sure there's many others that that do the same as a coach and a coach developer will look up to you and use you as an inspiration for those on that pathway. And what was really interesting there is that you are still working hard to try and hit that next bit. If you're allowed to share, what is there an end goal in sight regarding your coaching career? Is there a role you'd like to achieve?
There is. I'd love the coach developing side and working with the adults and that kind of aspect of it. But I'm in no rush to do that. I'm in a huge privilege position as I'm now working for a very good football club, who trust me to help their young players become the best they can be. So I'm not in a huge rush to go anywhere soon, but each time I just want to just try and get better at what I'm doing, whether that leads into coach developing or just coaching young players, is fine. I think the important thing that I try and stress is just being an expert in your field. So whatever you feel comfortable in, whether it be an under nines coach, whether it be an under 13s coach, whether it be coaching adults, but just try and be an expert at the field. We got so many specialised um, job roles and things at the moment. So you've seen throwing coaches and all those goalkeeper coaches, goalkeepers is a specialist, but goal striker coaches and positional coaches and analysts and all those things now that are coming in. I think it's important that we as coaches, we as coach developers or whatever you want to call it, really specialize in something. Because if not, then you might miss the detail of what you're really thinking about and homing that skill. Because you're trying to juggle so many things. If you narrow that focus slightly, then you can really, really dig in the detail of what you're trying to go after. So I think at that stage when I'm really going to focus on that particular target, then I'll know. Then I'll know what I'm going to go to.
I think before we head into what is never the quick fire question round, what advice would you give to any aspiring coaches listening today?
Same, just trying to better each and every day. Like I would say to many of the players I'm working with now and people I'm working with now, I think it never. I think you need to try and take elements of everything you try and go to. So if you go into a CPD event that that weren't very good or not very good, I think you can take little bits from everything. So really go and deliberately self-reflect on sessions that you do, on CPDs that you do, on coach observations, and all those kind of development tools that you have. Really deliberately self-reflect. I think that's kind of something that I try and do all the time. Really narrow that reflection tool and how I might improve a certain thing or what I've taken from something that I've done today or something that I've learned today or someone who I've
And that's quite difficult, isn't it?
hugely difficult. As I said, somebody I know that down. It's a deliberate. But I think that's really important, whether it's after each training session that they do, or after each CPD event, or each, whether just to have 30 minutes, 40 minutes where they go, right, this is my time to reflect. That's hot feedback, or whether you go cold feedback and go, right, give me 2-3 days to actually digest it and then reflect. It's up to the person. But deliberately self reflecting is something that I would advise.
Thank you for sharing that, Courtney. It's I've pinched this first quick fire question from a guy who you may know, Tennyson Williams.
Yes.
You've seen him about. He posed this question to me, and it absolutely rocked my world. So I'm hoping it does the same to you because I didn't put it in your question framework that I sent over to you.
Ah,
Define elite football.
so this is quick fire, right? So we've done this recently. So I put aggressive, ruthless, and creative.
It's interesting. Okay, thank you for that. Best moment in football to date.
On my debut. My debut. That's something I said before that was the highlight and pinnacle of what I was trying to achieve. All I wanted to do was get on the pitch. and become a footballer. And that was it.
Best friend in football.
Oh, I've got a couple. So it's probably not people that it's household names, but Mark Raw, who I had my youth team debut and went throughout the stages with, Rob Williston and Carlton Cole, who's I still in contact quite regular. Leon Knight is one of them who is regular that contact. But yeah, so all those boys from my younger youth team days is probably still in contact with. I've got Mark Beasley, David Noble, yeah, all those kind of players that I contact, and it's not that we keep in it every day, but we'll have a catch up every now.
Toughest opponent as a player.
Personally, because I played a left, and at that stage I played left wing back, and he played right wing back one day against me, or twice that day against me before he got promoted. Was Sean Wright Phillips. He was tough. He was quick. He was quick and agile. And we were similar players, but I just remember thinking. I remember thinking I was quick. I remember ball coming over the top, and I was quick. And I thinking I didn't really think I needed to run. And then I saw him coming, and by the time I thought about sprinting, he nailed me with a tackle. And I thought, oh my god, this is going to be a long day.
Best coach you've worked with.
I would have to say Graham Ricks because he dedicated a lot of time for my personal development. So yeah, I would say him. Oh, and Ray Wilkins, them two. Well, Ray Wilkins was top, really top coach. He had real empathy for players and knew how to speak to players, and was really calming influence of of um, of how to conduct yourself as a player. I know this is quick, but I'll tell you a quick story about Ray Wilkins. I remember we was playing in a youth team game and we were comfortable. I think we was like 7-8 nil up at the time playing against Charlton, and a few of the boys, me and Leo Knight at the time, thought well, we're gonna have a nutmeg competition. So how many times we're gonna nutmeg the opponent? So trying to take the mick,
Right.
and he nailed us after the game for it. Nailed us after the game, saying you want to get to a level you should never try and humiliate your opponents. Score goals and be effective, but don't take the mick. So that was kind of right. Okay, professionalize yourself.
Oh, incredible. Incredible, man. Biggest role model or influence?
Oh, my role model or influence. So my hero at growing up was John Barnes. So I tried to model my game on John Barnes when I was younger. Played similar, both left-footed, both from London, East Wembley, so I was not far from him. So that was a huge influence on my career. Role model, probably my brother. Probably my brother was the influence on my career. He used to keep me out all hours. Um, yeah, on the streets trying to just perfect my craft and trying to score against him. He was bigger than me, isn't it? So he's like, if you're not, you can't, you have to score past me, and I'm trying to hit as hard as I can. And he's like, catching it. but, but yeah, that probably made me determined and compete. So probably my brother, I would say.
Thank you. Best player you've had that you've worked with?
Oh, that's the easy one for me. Robert Prozinecki. It's an easy one for me. That's when, so in my first season at Portsmouth, he came and he was doing things. He played for anyone with kind of other age. Croatian captain, played for Real Madrid, Barcelona. Yeah, and just he couldn't move at the time. He's I think he's about 32, 31. Used to drink red wine and have a fag at half time, but was unbelievable. Portsmouth fans, you talk to Portsmouth fans about Robert Mozanetsky, everyone would say, what a player.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Um, oh, um, oh, confident, I would say, humble, and caring.
The final quick fire. Is there anybody you would recommend or like to hear on the podcast?
Um, it's difficult. I don't know what your network's like, Martin. So,
It's always up for growing, mate. Always up for growing.
um, yeah, I would like to hear from probably difficult. I reckon an elite player who's played. You want a name? You want a name, or
If
just
you've
a?
got one that you can provide, if not, we can always search them out.
Um, you caught me off guard here.
Sorry.
I'm trying to rack in my brains here. I think an elite player who's played in the league and for a long time and then fell away. So a similar person to maybe a Dele Alli or someone like that. A similar kind of frame. There's loads of young players that have played. I'll tell you who you can interview. Sammy Winnell.
Tell me when.
You know Sam Winnell.
No.
So Sam Winnell is he used to play for Wolves. He went to Sheffield Wednesday. He's played for a lot of clubs, and he's gone through a load of mental health issues. And he's now working with. He's doing a masters at Staffs Uni actually, and he's now working with young players at Wolves and around it about their mental health and how the journey can affect them.
Right.
And he talks about his journey and how it's affected him and his mental health and moving away and how the game affected him a lot. So I think that's someone you might be interested in talking to.
Definitely. We'll look to get in touch. There is
Yeah.
one, and again, a bit of a shameless plug that we did with Doral Profit.
Yes,
So Doz was labeled Golden Boy
yes.
tournament, and it was really interesting to hear his journey. He was very honest and open. How he was probably a little bit misguided.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's if anyone's listening, please go and visit that episode. That was from
nice.
at the top of his game. Who was
Yeah,
probably not led astray. That's the wrong word. I'm probably doing him a disservice there, but misinformed and misguided.
yeah. And that happens, right? When people start getting your ear and stuff like that. Yeah, but Sammy Weiner, he does something with Jake Jarvis, Jervis and Matt Jarvis.
Okay. Yeah,
So they're all working together to do something. But yeah, that would be interesting to have them on and talk about their journeys.
brilliant. Courtney, I could talk to you for hours. I'm pretty sure one Zoom wouldn't allow me to record for that long. And secondly, I know I've up into a lot of your diary, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, mate. I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon on one of the C licenses. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your journey with us. It's been a real insight. It'll probably take me a few replays of that to divulge the information and try and dissect that. So thank you for being so open and honest. I wish you, the players and all the staff at Wolves, the very best, mate, and keep being you, keep inspiring.
Thanks, man. No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the content that we're trying to bring to you. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Spotify, and if you want to see the video, you can see it on our YouTube channel, PCT Football Coaching.